Could you back up just a second? Because I think it's important. In verse 8, it talks about we shall also live with him, okay? And then it goes on and it references that Christ was raised from the dead and will never die again. That's in verse 9. So if Christ is alive, where is he alive? How would you define, how would that phrase be defined in your estimation?
He is alive in every possible way. He is alive physically, spiritually. He's not in the grave. Maybe I'm not understanding what you're asking.
You're saying, are he's alive physically? Where?
That's a good question. I don't know how to answer.
He returned to his Father in heaven.
Yeah, he returned to his Father in heaven, which is not a physical place, but we know that he has a physical body, and it was resurrected with him. So
you don't think heaven's a physical place?
I don't think the heaven where God's throne is a physical place. But I don't believe...
but I think it's important when we're talking about that he's alive, that be defined. And, you know, I don't have an axe to grind. I don't have any direction I'm going in. I can get that he's alive in our spirit and our heart in his... But it says that he will not die again. Thus, he must exist someplace. And, you know, so I think that's a point that is worth discussing.
I thought Yeshua was the physical manifestation of Elohim, that the Father was spirit.
Yeah, well, we're spirits too, and we're physical.
So you think he returned to the Father, he just went into the ether?
Whatever that means. I think he still has a physical body, but you know, that's one of those topics where what exactly is heaven in God's throne room? I don't really understand it. I don't believe that it's a place that we can necessarily see without being caught up into the heavens, whatever that means.
So when Yahweh called Moses up and then told him to imitate all the stuff he saw, where was he?
He was on top of Sinai, and he saw into God's throne room, or he saw a vision, or exactly how he saw that, I don't know.
But I mean, like he saw stuff that he then did, like animals, the laver, the menorah, the bread, all that stuff.
So you're referencing Hebrews where the tabernacle's in heaven? Is that what you're referencing?
No, I'm referencing Exodus when Yahweh called him up and then he sent him back down. It says, build all the stuff that you saw.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he said build it after
Moses.
Yeah, build it according to the pattern that I showed you on the mountain. Now,
like I got a blueprint. If I'm building a bathroom, somebody gives me directions.
How exactly was that pattern communicated? Did God show him a vision of the tabernacle in heaven, whatever that would look like to his physical eyes? Did he show him a pattern? Yeah, I don't know.
Well, because in Exodus, I mean, it was more than just Moses, because in Exodus 24:8, they all went up there and had dinner.
Well, they all went on the mountain.
But they ate, but then they saw before them a sapphire sea of glass.
So you assert heaven to be a physical place that is in existence today. That's what I'm hearing, right, Tim?
I can only go on what I read. I don't try to. I'm a simple man, blue collar. If we're in a war, I can probably get you back alive kind of guy.
Yeah, simple I'm not so sure about, but
well, if heaven, or if this place where God dwells, let's just put it that way. Let's, instead of putting a bunch of baggage on it, if that place exists and it's a physical place, then it exists outside of time. It might be a physical place, but it could exist outside of time. So having vision into that world, God allowing Moses to see into that world, is very possible. So it's possible that it is physical, just not a dimension that we can see into where we are on a regular basis.
Yeah, well, I think that, you know, when I say that it's not a physical place, that's probably the wrong way to put it. I would say that it is everything that this world is, but more. So that, you know, if you think about dimensions, you know, the three dimensions that we normally have of space, you know, up, sideways, you know, whatever they are. And you think of the fourth dimension, maybe of time. But the human imagination trying to picture something with more dimensions than that. I mean, we can kind of display things like that on a computer screen, but it's really just optical illusions. It's not actually adding more dimensions. Heaven is a place that has all of the attributes of the physical universe, except that it is more, there are more dimensions to it. At least that's the way that I think about it. It's one of those things that scripture doesn't spell out in clear enough detail for me to be satisfied that I understand any of it. There are just hints here and there. How can someone go up on Mount Sinai and see into God's throne room and somebody else go up on the mountain and not see it? Yeah, I don't know how it all works. Somehow we need to reconcile all of these encounters with God with the idea that nobody has seen God and lived. And, I know how I reconcile that, but, that's another one of those topics where I am certainly open to being wrong, because scripture really doesn't explain it very clearly, in my opinion. I'm convinced that heaven is not something that we can simply, look up and see, the heaven where God's throne is, unless God allows it, which means that there is some difference. Exactly what that difference is, whether that's, he enables some aspect of our vision that normally is dormant, or what it is. But that does mean that something that is purely physical can exist in that space. But once you move it to that space, that's the wrong way to put it. I was about to say, when you move it to that space, it takes on more attributes, more dimensions, but that's probably not true either. It probably already has those attributes, and they're just not realized or discernible until it moves into that space, or God opens your vision to see it. I don't really know what. These are the same kind of questions about what and where is the grave. Is it down inside the earth, or is that a metaphor for something else? Or is it like space that's overlapping? And I don't know. It gets hairy.
I was late to the discussion, so I just wanted to know, were you guys talking about where Jesus is now? Is that what we were talking about?
Yeah. Based on verse 8 and 9 here, it talks about that Christ is alive. He died, he rose again, he is alive now. But what does that mean if he's not on earth, where we can physically, where he's tangible? What does it mean that he is alive? When he rose from the grave, he had a physical body that we could see and touch. And then he went up into heaven. So is there a physical body there right now? That's really the question, I think.
Doesn't the scriptures talk about him being at the right hand of the throne of the Father?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, people did not recognize Jesus' body before his death, right? Like, people were.
I think he was hiding himself. He was making sure that people couldn't tell who he was until he was ready. When he's on the road to Emmaus, and he's talking with the two disciples, and they didn't know who he was until the moment he sat down and ate with them. And as soon as that happened, he opened their eyes so that they could see him. And then they realized who it was, but then he was gone.
We cannot see the demons or the angels with our human eyes, but yet,
not normally, yeah.
Back in Old Testament days, there was angels that were walking like they looked like men.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if they hid themselves or what. That's still something I haven't really dove into, but it is very interesting, right? And then even the parallels of Jesus being in the furnace, if that was Jesus, it's just very interesting. The spiritual world versus the physical world.
The writer of Hebrews says that even now, or at least at that time, when we encounter strangers and do good things for them, we don't know whether we're entertaining angels.
Right.
And I think that people do see demons and angels even today, but they don't always recognize what they're seeing. And it's not all the time. Normally these things are hidden from us, but sometimes we're allowed to see into those other dimensions, for lack of a better word.
Right. So my point was like, okay, well, if we can see in those dimensions, what's to say that Jesus is like has a physical body up in heaven as well because
yeah. Well, the
and
scriptures
you
say
know
that he was resurrected with a physical body, and that
right
we will be resurrected with physical bodies that will be like his.
right right
So I can't really avoid the conclusion that he still has a physical body in whatever realm he is physically present in. I can't, I'm kind of getting a picture forming in my head. You know how a lot of pagan belief systems have this idea of a twilight zone, not really reference to the TV show. The TV show is a reference to the same concept.
Dusk and dawn.
Yeah, in the Celts, this was a really big deal, that dusk and dawn are the times when the spiritual world and the physical world intersect, or that's when the barriers between them are the thinnest. And I don't think that's entirely wrong. I think there are some hints of that in the rules about Passover, which I've got an article on my website, and it's all just speculation. But that whole concept of between the evenings, I think is, in my opinion, is actually talking about this spiritual twilight zone. And if this idea is true, then the spiritual world exists in the same place that we are, that it overlaps. There's not a separate place where heaven and hell is compared to our universe that we can see and feel. It's in the same place. It's just that it is removed in dimensions or sight or something. I don't know what the right words are. I don't think dimensions are the right word, but I just don't have a better one.
realms.
Yep.
Realms, maybe. Yeah, lots of interesting stuff, but so much speculation involved in trying to figure out what some of this stuff means or what it looks like.
Because we are reading Romans, and it does say that we will be raised as, with him. If he is physically alive, then that's an element that we must ponder,
Mm-hmm.
If we're using that as a template and we establish that he is alive today physically, then that becomes meaningful.
Yeah, and I'm confident that means exactly what it says. He is alive today, spiritually and physically. He is not in the grave. And we will one day be, our bodies, if we're alive at the time, our bodies will be essentially destroyed and remade. If we're dead, we will be resurrected and given new bodies or remade bodies, and they will be physical. We're not going to be floating in the clouds, strumming harps in, wings and all that, because that's just not what scripture describes.